Welcome. I'm your host, Dustin,
I'm your co-host Aaron.
and today we have another episode of.
Within the Barrens. Welcome to hell.
Our Within the Barrens. I still don't know if I want to call it a season or like a segment or a series or whatever it is for the show, but today joining us is another special guest, Craig Singer. He is an ex Disney creative VP and has directed his latest film, 645, which is a very, very good movie. It's a time loop thriller. He also has other movies under his belt like A Good Night to Die, Dark Ride, Perkins 14, and Animal Room. If you're a fan of time loop movies, this is definitely one that you want to seek out. We actually saw this Salem Horror Fest last year, so this is probably my third or fourth time seeing it. And it's a ride, man. And thank you for wanting to come on.
Thank you for having me. It's looking forward to it, and I was really kind of bummed. I wanted to go to. I'd never been to Salem before, and I was really looking forward to going to the Horror Fest. And something came up, and I wasn't able to go. But I definitely want to check out Salem one of these years. Maybe it's better to go in the off season. I hear it gets kind of crazy in the.
Yeah, it does.
It's honestly more beautiful, like in the springtime, like going up, looking at the shoreline, and the weather is just way nicer, and yeah, it's less clustered, and so I'd recommend off season.
I live down the Jersey Shore, so I tell people the same thing about the summertime down the Jersey Shore is when you should avoid it. 'Cause it gets kind of crazy. It's much nicer in the off season, so I totally get it.
I can imagine, yeah.
And the good news too is Salem Horror Fest is actually going to be taking place in April of next year, so it's going to be on the off season. So if you wanted to come to the fest, it's in April,
cool,
and check out the whole shebang over there. It's really, really beautiful.
Yeah, thank you for telling me that. I think I might do that.
Yeah, for sure. I know Kay would love to have you since your film was there and whatnot. So yeah, I would love to meet you in person over there and kind of show you around because I love Salem. We're very, very close to where Salem is, and I visit there.
That's fantastic. Well, on a side note, I actually have a property called Cassie's Poem, which my partner is a woman named Arlene Klasky who created the Rugrats.
Oh, really?
And it takes place in kind of a Salem type town. And so a lot of the artwork that we created for that has that kind of vibe. So yeah, I'd love to definitely check it out in person.
That's awesome. So I guess we can start with the questions, and I guess the best way to kind of do this is just kind of start from the beginning. And what kind of sparked your love for film and directing and writing?
That's a great question. So first of all, a lot of people think I'm just like into horror, and I love and respect the genre, but I love all cinema, like dramas, comedies.
Same.
Probably the two films that affected me the most was The Godfather, and secondly, I saw the original Night of the Living Dead in a drive-in movie theater in the middle of the woods when I was a kid, and I had reoccurring nightmares for like 20 years. And in my nightmares, like Night of the Living Dead, it was like The Purge, like once a year, Night of the Living Dead actually happened. And so the power of that experience was such a formidable lesson in terms of what you can do in terms of manipulating an audience and kind of putting someone in in capable hands and giving them a thrill or a joyride, if you will.
Yeah.
And but I never really thought I could do it professionally. It was I grew up in kind of a blue collar area near Paterson, New Jersey, and filmmaking was always something other people did. So I was never really expecting to do it. And what happened was I always had a love and passion for cinema. It was almost like my cathedral, and I used to just write letters to my favorite filmmaker, a director named Elia Kazan, who was credited with discovering Marlon Brando and James Dean, and he's a great director. And he wrote me back and encouraged me. He was one of the founding members of the Actors Studio, and he just told me, "Don't worry about school." He said, "Pick up a camera and just shoot," which was not as easy as today, because everybody's walking around with an iPhone, basically,
Yeah,
a film
exactly.
in your pocket. So back then you had to get short ends or Super 16 or 35 millimeter or Super 8. And it was harder to do, but it was kind of worth it because it made you really think about your shots, and you didn't just go crazy like with digital. So I'm actually glad I had that experience. My first film, we actually started cutting it on film. So we had work print in Technicolor film I did called Animal Room with Matthew Lillard and Neil Patrick Harris. And then halfway through, the producer said, there's this thing called the Avid. We're gonna start cutting digitally." So at least I had a little taste of what it was like to actually the tactile experience of like touching and smelling and feeling actual film, which is really kind of cool.
Awesome.
But yeah, I mean, the old-fashioned way must be very like real rewarding, though. I'm sure, But
Very time consuming, but and I remember reading how the thing with digital is there's such an immediacy to it. Like when you would make an edit on film, you really had to think about your edit. Like, is it
Yeah.
make sense? Is it going to work? So yeah, you had it was a little bit more. It forced you to be a little bit more thoughtful, I should say. Nowadays, you could do montages and split screens and fades and dissolves and all sorts of transitions just on the fly. So
Alt delete.
yeah, exactly. It's a different animal, but it's an incredible. They're both really incredible. The technology's just come so far that the challenge now isn't really making anybody can make a film. It's really
Exactly.
Rising above the white noise and all the muck that's out there, right, and getting it seen, and that becomes the tricky part.
Still gotta have passion at the end of the day too.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the big thing. But what was your time at working at Disney like?
Incredible. I mean, it was a privilege and an honor. I had a very small entertainment company I bootstrapped in Tribeca, and we were kind of pioneers in the user generated content space. And it was a real privilege when you get that phone. I was in Romania actually doing my second for Lionsgate. And my lawyer called me up and he's like, Disney's sick of hiring you guys. They want to buy your company. So I was like, right on. That's a really, really good phone call to get. And then they asked me to stay on and kind of help build their online studio. So it was a privilege. But the downside is it took me out of the director's chair for like 8 years. So that was the bad part. But the good part is it was just such an incredible journey, and I met so many really talented, imaginative people that it was a fair exchange. And then when I left Disney to go back to filmmaking, I have all that experience now, so I think it was well worth it.
Paid off, yeah. But what kind of projects?
It's a great company, though. I mean, it was tough for me because the company was more of a digital online social media company, so they kind of put you in that box. So I couldn't bring them like my projects and my scripts because I wasn't thought of that way. I was like the online guy.
Okay.
So that was one of the frustrating things, but all in all, it was an incredible, rewarding journey, and it was a real privilege to be part of that company.
That's good. It gave you some time to think up more ideas, and
100%, totally. I was a whore for good material. So I was hoarding like any good script or idea, and I've got maybe 25 IPs that I control of multiple genres. So I really use that time to obtain kind of best in breed material and scripts that are just better than most. I read a lot of scripts, as I'm sure you can imagine, and it's tough. It's really hard to craft 90 or 100 pages with a characters and a plot and an arc, and just because you can write an email doesn't mean you're a writer.
Exactly.
And just like you could paint a house doesn't mean you're Van Gogh. So I think that's one of the frustrating things is young people nowadays, because they have these things like TikTok and things like that they feel entitled to like a 3-picture deal at Paramount because they do like a 20-second video. And that's not to say they don't, but it's, you have to have a respect for the craft and the discipline.
Exactly.
And have to be willing to take the steps necessary to really do the work.
Yeah.
Do authentically.
Yeah, this day and age is very like filled with influencers and stuff like that who think they can kind of just do whatever. I mean, it has been, some movies I have came out with some of the influencers that are out there, and I gotta say they're not that great. But I mean, if it's something,
it's a different world. The media landscape just changes so on an hourly basis. It's funny. I had an actress actually flying from London to meet me in New York for a project, and we were talking about actors, and Marlon Brando's name came up. And,
oh, really?
And she didn't know who Marlon Brando
Oh,
was.
no.
I felt so old. I told her, I said, one day somebody's going to tell you they don't know who Billie Eilish is, and you're going to know exactly how I feel.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny.
Billie Eilish?
Exactly.
I actually have a pretty fun question here. Is What was it like working with Thomas G. Waits? I mean, for those of who don't know, he was Windows and John Carpenter's The Thing, and seeing him in 645 was actually really cool. So, what was that experience like?
You can't leave out the Warriors.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's
He was
true.
one of the Warriors, man.
Yeah.
He was like, he's a cult. Yeah, he's a great actor. He co-starred with Al Pacino in American Buffalo, and when Al could have had any actor on the planet. So Tommy's great. He and I go way back. We've done short films together. I've directed him. He did some voiceover work on a film I did in Romania called Perkins 14 for Lionsgate, and we just stayed in touch. And actually, I co-wrote a play called Paradiddle about a drummer, and it was my first work produced off Broadway, and Tom directed that play. So I got to be lazy and sit in the audience. It was awesome. And so then when we did the 645, Tom and I were friends. So I was like, Tom, I want you to do. I think originally he was going to do Armin Garrow's role, Gene, the innkeeper, and then we ended up going to Armin, and then we went to Tommy, and he wanted to play Larry. So he's great. He's like fearless. He's an artist. I think he stripped his clothes off in one scene. I've got the blackmail Tom Waits footage for, but yeah, he's a trooper, and he just directed his first film, and he invited me to a kind of a pre-screening in a couple of weeks in the city, and I'm really proud of him. I'm really happy for him.
Awesome. It's good that he's still doing things, because I feel like there's a lot of these 80s actors, and even like before then, even like to some extent like the early 90s, where you see a lot of them kind of like drop off and don't really do much. So it's good to see that we still have like these people that we've watched growing up are still out there, killing it and making all these awesome films, and even now directing and writing things, like stepping out of the acting chair is really, really cool. So it was awesome to see him in your film.
Thank you. I'll tell you a quick little Tom Waits aside. So, I don't know if you know this or not, but we had 645 had a nationwide theatrical release, which is pretty unheard of nowadays. So we were bookended by Jungle Cruise and Black Widow and Suicide Squad, like $200 million films, and in our tiny little film, which is pretty amazing. And the head of Regal Cinemas flew, I think they're in, I want to say Tennessee. He flew from Tennessee to the premiere at Union Square in New York City just to meet Tom Waits.
Wow.
So he was so excited. He's like a huge Warriors fan. So he's like, Warriors is one of my favorite movies. So he flew in, and Tom, and he took pictures and signed autographs. So it was, Tommy's, it's funny how certain people in your cast just strike a chord. Ray Boom Boom Mancini, the champion boxer's in my movie. And there's some people who just are crazy fight fans, and they had to meet Ray. So things like that pop up. And, Remy Ma was in my film, and just got a huge hip hop following. And even Armin from The Sopranos and from The Departed, he's got his own little following. So it was kind of cool in that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's actually a kind of another question I wanted to ask you was, I know that this film was hitting festivals before it, kind of got to the cinemas. So what was it like going from the festival circuit and then going to, the big screen? Was that like a big like wow moment? Like, wow, I can't believe this is happening. Well, I feel like I would be like that.
it's a great story. In fact, I think it was the other way around. I think we did the theaters first, and then
really?
The festival started. I think we applied, but what happened was a friend of mine named Mike Rudnitsky was in theatrical distribution for like 40 years with MGM and Weinstein Co. And he wanted to see my film. I said, well, why don't you just wait till a festival? He's like, no. Can you curse on this podcast?
Yeah, you can. Yep.
So he was like, fuck that. I want to see the movie. So he's like, send me the link. So I sent him the link. Next day, he's like, hey, this is a really good film. So I was like, thank you. I said, maybe you could help us with like a New York, LA premiere. And he goes, I think we could do a little bit better than that. And then the whole Regal Cinemas thing was like, it's a dream for a film. It's like the Super Bowl for filmmakers to see your film on a big screen, right? I mean, you could do a 4-wall where you rent a theater, but this was a proper nationwide theatrical. This was pretty cool. And so, yeah, Mike was really instrumental in that whole thing happening. And then we just started winning. I think we started winning festival upon festival. We won so many. I mean, today I just got my award. We won Sweden, we won Sicily, we won Rome, we won London, we won Paris. Wow. We just were crushing it because people like, it's not a typical slasher film where there's just a body count. It's kind of like a romantic thinking man's thriller. You know what I mean? So it kind of delivers the scares, and there isn't actual characters that people care about. They're invested in Jules and Bobby, and I think that has a lot to do with Augie and Michael just delivering the goods as performers. Are just incredibly talented actors, both of them. All my
Yeah.
cast, I was blessed with an incredible cast, and I cast the film myself because I couldn't afford a casting director. So I was really lucky that I have some good friends and some people that I took a chance with, and some of my crew even. I tend to like to work with the same crew, but in this case, I really didn't have that luxury. So there were some people I hadn't worked with before who just rose to the occasion and brought their A game, and just was such an incredible an embarrassment of riches to find such talented people who were there kind of for the right reasons.
Yeah, and they definitely do, make this whole movie. Everybody is really, really good. Even like all the twists and turns that happen, and like the ending of the film too, is just like a wow. When you like watch time loop films, they're always not really about, I don't know, like it is about the main person, right? It always is like the person who's going through it all. But like the way that this kind of works its way into the time loop and how it kind of gets out and you get to the very end, it's way different than any other time loop movie that I've seen. And I think what you're doing is really genius. And I kind of wanted to ask another question is since
Well, we should just ended it genius. I think that's the most important thing that you've said. We should just
yeah. And
so thank you for that. It's tough because the trick with time loop is to not let it feel overly, repetitive or boring. And I think we kind of pulled that off. And
yeah,
I credit my editor Sam, and my composer Costas is a protege of Hans Zimmer, and his fee is normally my budget for my whole film. So he completely delivered an amazing. If you just go back and listen to the score on 645, it's art, man. The guy's just so fucking talented. But thank you for those kind words. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for making this awesome film, and that kind of wanted to lead into the next one that I wanted to ask was, how is it writing and directing a time loop movie compared to doing like a conventional, just like one storyline, nothing like a time loop? Like, was it difficult doing something like this compared to just like a straightforward film? Not to say that this movie isn't straightforward.
A lot of my credit goes to Robert Dean Klein, my writing partner. I wrote the original story, but then Robert just nailed the script, and he just put so much thought into it, and so you follow the Bible, you follow the blueprint, like building a house. So it was there on the page, and we did have some flexibility to go off page and do some things that were a little bit less traditional, but it's all storytelling, right? So you're just trying to tell, and in this case you're trying to stay one step ahead of the audience without giving it away. The thing that kind of shocks me is how many people like are surprised and enjoy the ending. There's a real ambiguity to the ending of 645. So people often say to me, well, was Bobby on the island, or was it all in his head? And I'm like, that's for you to decide.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the fun of it, is not to have the filmmaker put it in a pretty box with a pretty bow on top. It's for for you guys to talk about it in the coffee shop after you see it.
Yeah, that's what I like about films is you kind of having to think and you talk to everybody. That's why it's really cool to see. See these in a cinema too. So it's a good thing that you're able to get it into a cinema and also go to festival circuits and whatnot. So the conversations start happening. And I've been kind of digging through the internet to see other people's reactions to this movie, and everybody's like the same way. Like, wow, that ending is crazy, but I love it. And then everybody's like, "Oh, what's your way of interpreting this and whatnot?" So yeah, you guys definitely did a really good job of having like a thought-provoking film.
Nice to hear. I appreciate that. I tend not to read reviews because you're gonna inevitably with any film you're gonna have people who love it, you're gonna have people who hate it, and everything in between. So the good stuff usually trickles down to me, and I hear about it. So, but the bad stuff, I don't want to put myself in a bad mood. The most telling thing was when you do a film, you do like you screen like the rough assemblage. It's not even a cut, it's just like an assembly. And it's usually really hard. It's like you want to throw up. It's that painful when you watch your first assembly because it's just all the warts. And when I saw the first assembly of 645, I didn't feel sick. I felt pretty good. I was like I knew we had a film in here, and I knew we just had to kind of polish the stone. And that was the thing about COVID, is it really kind of gave us the time to dig in and to do a lot of the kind of tertiary little details that enrich a film, which was the benefit of working alone in dark rooms. Me and my team, we would, have the time to do that. And there is a cut of 6:45, which is like 2 hours and 40 minutes, which will
Oh wow.
never see the light of day. But I love it because I don't mind. But people nowadays, everybody's like, everybody wants that 90-minute sweet spot for whatever reason. That's the attention span. So that was the
shorter
goal.
And shorter.
It's crazy.
I actually really do like longer movies, but that's just me. That's just me. I know a lot of people like the the 1:30 mark, so that just definitely.
Like I'll give you, for instance, just for you, a little behind the scenes, because you say you like longer movies. So there's, when they first go to the bed and breakfast, Gene, the proprietor, gives them a whole tour through the basement, through the kitchen, almost like Grady in The Shining, when Grady's kind of touring. It's almost like a rip off of that scene. And Armin did such a great job with it, but it made the film 5 minutes longer, and it didn't really move the story along. So maybe one day that'll be part of the outtakes, but that's an example of like what would make the film a little bit longer.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So what's your creative process like? Like, do you just like ideas just pop in your head, you write it down and kind of sort through them, and then, or
I just find a dark corner where I could sit and cry and just
let it all out.
It's different. It's a really great question. I think for me, like the muse has to kind of whisper in my ear and tap me on the shoulder. I'm not disciplined like a lot of my writing partners. They wake up and they write. That's what they do, and that's a writer. I come up with ideas, and sometimes I used to write a lot more in terms of screenplays, but now I'm happy to come up with the story and the premise. I'm pretty good with that. And then I'll work with a writing partner, or I'll hand it off to a writing partner and let them do a lot of the heavy lifting. But what happens for me is music helps me, informs me. When I'm starting a film, I kind of have to get that opening shot. Once I get the opening shot, it's almost kind of like priming a pump or lighting a fuse. Mm-hmm. And until I get that opening shot, it's really kind of tough for me. Like I did a film at Universal called Dark Ride. And then when I had the opening shot, it was like breadcrumbing. It was like a story. I would just kind of imagine the scenes. Yeah. And so for me, that's generally how it works. Also, and I was thinking about this the other day. It's a great question. Once you actually lock a location, everything changes. Everything's out the window. Your storyboards, your shot list, because a location will inform a lot of different things. Like had I not actually been in that bed and breakfast, there's a shot that goes down all the staircases. I don't know if you remember that in 6:45.
Yeah.
And it starts at the top with Augie on the phone with her mom, and the camera literally goes down like 5 flights of stairs into the basement. Now, unless you lock that location, you can't even, really dream of coming up with a shot like that unless you have the budget to build a set, which we didn't. So a lot of times it's really physically being in the location, getting there early, kind of walking around the location, feeling the energy and the vibe from the location. And then you can start to, formulate your shots.
Yeah, that's a really good shot too. And there's a lot of really, really beautiful scenery in this too. And the movie feels so polished as well, and it's very pleasing on the eyes. And that's one thing that a lot of films are starting to do now, is like implement a little bit more color, more bright lighting, and kind of like really light things in a way that they've never really done it before. And I think it really has to do with a lot of like the digital side of like, you can have a little bit of digital kind of help you with lighting. And with a lot of the films that are coming out right now, like I just talked to some of the guys that were doing a new movie that's coming out, Revealer, and they were kind of talking about how they had to implement some digital lighting into it. And this film definitely is very, very pleasing, and all the scenes are great. Nothing is like too dark or too bright. Everything is really, really well done.
Well, the location, I think, we're pretty lucky that we found a town that has not been overly shot. It looks like it's right out of like the line in the film, out of a Norman Rockwell painting. And I think, Woody Allen shot Stardust Memories there, but other than that, it really is kind of a hidden gem. And a ton of credit goes to Lucas Batassi, my cinematographer, my DP. He came in from LA. We never worked together before, so that's a huge leap of faith. And he's just such a brilliant talent. And we'll be working together on other projects. But I was fortunate enough that he came out and we watched some films together. We talked a lot about films over the phone. He's just super, super talented. It was any shot I wanted to come up with, or he came up with, he was just down to execute it, and he would operate the camera as well as light. So yeah, he and my editor Sam Edelman. I'd never worked with Sam before, and he's one of the best editors, if not the best editor I've ever worked with. And
that's awesome.
like having crafts people like that, and And also the nice thing about Sam was he's the only other kind of old guy other than me on the set. So it was like a bunch of kids and us. So it was nice to have Sam. We had each other's backs, and we brought out Maria, my executive producer from California, and we met in California and we talked about this. And again, Augie was helpful in helping introduce me to some of the kind of young LA film family that I was fortunate enough to work with, and everybody was cool. Everybody pitched in, and it was kind of like Coppola filmmaking in the late '60s, early '70s, where everybody kind of wore many hats, and it was really a pleasurable experience.
That's awesome. Good on your whole team.
How does it feel having won multiple awards for something that you created and or like thought of, and that you put together a group of people and like I said, with just an idea and just made it happen? How does it feel like knowing so many people appreciate it?
It's a nice, it's not about that. It really is about the journey, and I really loved the film from day one. So if it didn't win the awards, I still would have an affection for the journey and the relationships and the work. That said, I was thinking about this the other day. So many people will watch the film on Apple TV or Vudu or Redbox or wherever it's out there. Why? It's in Best Buy, it's in Target, it's in Walmart, and they may really love the film, and I'll never know it because most people, if you like a film, you don't take the time. The people who are nasty and who want to hurt you, they'll take the time to go online and
Oh,
scan
yeah.
it.
Definitely.
If you like a film, generally, if you like a film, you like a film, then you go about your life. So the awards do one thing. It's kind of a reminder and a validator that people do like the movie. And so, when you win an award, and you try to imagine how many films are submitted to these awards, sometimes hundreds, if not thousands.
Yeah.
And so when you win Best Feature or Best Narrative Feature or Best Horror or Best Thriller or Best Director, it's just kind of a reminder that the film is tapping into, and I knew it would find an audience. I knew people, people would like it. But again, nowadays it's tough to second guess what people actually like because it's very, very subjective. Some people just want to see heads getting cut off.
Yeah,
whole film. That was never my thing. It was never.
You just change in the blink of an eye too.
I'm not critical of people who like those types of movies. It's personally, it's not my cup of tea. But yeah. So to answer your question, it feels really nice.
Good. You deserve it.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing that I think is something that I like to always know about, because usually films are a reflection of like what the writer or the director has going on in their lives, and also like what's going on in the world. So I was curious, was there something that maybe have happened in your life or something that you've seen going on in the world that kind of gave you an inspiration, or even like your writers that helped you with this have any kind of inspiration to help make this film?
Well, I don't know about the help make the film, but in terms, obviously, there's the Groundhog Day comparison. I always thought that was a great concept for a thriller, right? I thought, this should be a horror film. And by the way, when I wrote the original drafts, Robert and I, this was way before Happy Death Day, and which I've never seen, by the way. This is way before, I would say, majority of the time loop horror film. So it was very new and novel at the time. Now it's a cottage industry. Now there's so many time loop films, but back then that wasn't the case. So in terms of inspiration, I think what's interesting to me is that kind of with the pandemic and COVID, it's like everybody on the planet's lived their version of my film.
Yeah.
The day that repeats, the sameness to a day. I think that's kind of really kind of bittersweet and very kind of ironic and interesting.
Yeah. All right, that's a good answer. What else you got going on over there, Aaron, for questions?
Yes, sir.
I like your Wolfman head behind you.
Oh, thank you. I have so many masks. I have like almost all the Michael Myers masks over here too. I'm a huge collector.
Do you have any projects that you're currently working on, or anything you want to share? Anything that's going on that you're thinking up?
Yeah, it's three projects. One is Paradiddle, which was the play that Tom directed, and doing a film version of that drama. And then there's a project called Tat, which takes place around the world of memorial tattoos, which is probably the darkest script I've ever done. It makes 645 look like a kindergarten project. And it's really disturbing, but in a good way. And then there's a drama called Monkey's Nest that I might be shooting very shortly in Youngstown, Ohio, with a pretty big cast, which I'm not at liberty to share, but when the time is right, I promise I will share with you.
All right, awesome.
We'll be keeping our eye out.
Yes. So do you have a favorite scene in this film? Is there one that like sticks out the most to you? Do you like, yeah, this is such a great scene?
Well, there's a couple. Like you said, there's a lot of really visually pleasing moments in the film. I love the split screen montage.
Oh yeah.
So, and the composer is Ron Aniello, who's Bruce Springsteen's partner. He's his producer.
Oh wow.
He did Bruce's last 5 albums, and he just did it as a favor. I met him socially, and I didn't know him, and I showed him the scene. He's like, yeah, it's just so beautiful. It's just not really like a horror film, but it's just really, it's cool, and it gets you inside Bobby's head, and in terms of like the inner struggle and turmoil. And I think it's an interesting device that we really don't overuse. We use it very sparingly. So that's probably one of a few visual moments that I think are pretty imaginative.
Yeah. I'd say that I think our favorite scene would be. I don't want to spoil too much of this, but I think this is okay because it's kind of still towards the beginning of the film. Is when Bobby is he went through the whole day. He's gonna go take a shower. And he's like, "Oh, we finally did it!" And he lets out this big relief. Finally did it. We're gonna go do it. He goes to open up the door, and then he just lays there because he's like, oh, crap, because it's like, okay, it's gonna happen again. I think that scene is really really powerful in a lot of ways, because you're rooting for him. He's like, yes, yeah, you're finally gonna get there, and then nope. I mean, you have a little bit of
It's a
like,
tough shot too because it's a 360 camera move.
yeah,
And you got to get the camera and the actors to kind of. It's a ballet, isn't it? Because you want the
yeah.
camera to kind of brush by him as he gets behind Augie and then back on Bobby. So it's it was a tough shot, but it's a great shot. It's something that again we didn't do a lot of the 360 camera stuff, but yeah, it's a nice little moment. I agree.
And do you have a favorite horror film? Is there anything out there that you would like watch every single day if you could?
Well, again, I probably Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
I love newer films. I was a huge fan of 28 Days Later and It Follows. I thought it was great. I just saw his follow-up film Under this, I think it's called Under the Silver Lake. Same director as It Follows. Didn't like it as much as It Follows, but I thought that was a really, really loved the music, loved the actress in It Follows. So yeah, I like, but in terms of favorite films, I think anything by Kazan, Kubrick, Kazan, East of Eden's probably my favorite film. But yeah, I binge films. Like I'll watch Mad Max Fury Road 30 times. I think I've seen the new Dune 9 times at this point. So I tend to watch films that I like over and over and over again, just kind of study them for different aspects of the film.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Find something new every time.
Yeah.
100%, yeah.
So I didn't look too deep into this, but is there going to be any sort of release for the score? Because I'm a huge like movie score collector. Is there anything on vinyl? I didn't really take a look, so I wanted to ask you if there was like anything that's going to be coming out for the.
I don't know about vinyl, but I believe they're doing a CD for
awesome.
$6.45. And they were talking about like, I think this is the new world NFTs. So I don't know if it's going to be an NFT or how it would be an NFT. But the answer to your question is yeah, because Hakeem Draper and David Lotman are co-music supervisors along with Joe Rudge. And some of the songs in the film are fantastic. I mean, the opening music, there's the closing music with Money is her name, and just her voice is so beautiful and melodic and haunting. That's one of my favorite moments, actually. So there's some really great. Jimmy Harry has it's a band called Horgasm, and during the drunken bar scene, there's that Horgasm music from like it's a driving '80s kind of a vibe.
Yeah.
So there's some really good music in the film, and yeah, I think that we definitely will have a CD, and we should have a CD.
All right, I'll definitely be picking that up. Is there? This is always a really fun one to ask too. Is there a scene that was the most difficult to do, and once you guys got it, you felt really relieved?
I think the staircase shot was pretty difficult because you're carrying a camera down, all those flights of stairs. I think it was 5 flights, and I think you bump your elbow, you see a shadow. So it's like when you're going around a corner, you've got to have the camera. Like when we got onto the landing, like the ground floor, we had to have the camera go a certain way to avoid a big shadow. And so that was tricky. I think we did that maybe 8 times.
Oh wow.
But yeah, you could spend a day on a shot like that. Matter of fact, my first film, Animal Room, we had a Steadicam shot that went through an arcade and then down in the basement of the arcade and then back up the arcade. And on the way up, he kept hitting his elbow because it was really tight, really tight spot. And he's a great Steadicam operator. So shots like that can, when you're dealing with techno cranes or jibs or equipment, it eats the clock. So we were pretty fortunate because we were lean and mean. We were kind of running gun with a lot of our equipment. So we had the Airflex and not a lot of heavy equipment, a lot of handheld and a lot of handheld. And we had like a movie rig, so we didn't do a lot of dolly shots, a few dolly shots, and that kind of helped make the days happen a lot quicker. When you're working with heavy dollies and techno cranes and things like that, jibs, it can be very, very time consuming. We just didn't have the luxury. So we had our back against the wall, and it was like necessity is the mother of invention.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, it's a beautiful shot. Like I said, there's so many great things that happen in this film, and the whole design of everything. And that's what I've been really liking about current films that are coming out within the last like 3 to 5 years. Is that I really think they're starting to finally push boundaries in the digital age, really, and also with story writing. Things were so, I don't know, it was like a big lull period of everything was kind of just the same. And this is definitely a film that's not that. This definitely breaks out of the norm. I know that you said that other directors and writers are starting to do time loop films, but this one definitely sticks out from all the ones that I've seen of late anyway. And it's really, really fun. I've watched it, like I said, during the fest. I bought it, and I'm gonna have to get a physical copy because I have it digital, but I do want to buy physical, and I'm gonna be getting the soundtrack as well because everything in this film is phenomenal.
Nice. Thank you so much. Get your audience to watch it and to rent it. That would be so amazing. And then when we do the CD, I'll sign a copy and I'll send it over to you.
Oh wow, that would be freaking awesome, dude. Thank you. Yeah, this is such a great film. So yeah, if anybody who hasn't seen this, you really do need to see it because it definitely is. It's not the typical time loop like you're thinking of right now. It pushes a lot of boundaries on it. A really good job on your team and everybody have there, all the actors and everything. Everybody, solid work.
Thank you. I'll pass that along.
All right, and I don't think I have any other questions. Aaron, did you have any last minute thoughts or anything that you wanted to ask Greg? All right. Craig, is there anything that you want to shout out to our listeners, or anything that's going to be up and coming, anything that we should be keeping our eyes out for?
Just thank you for supporting the film and saying such nice things, and you guys have a great podcast going, so your fans are lucky, and keep up the good work, and anything I can do for you guys in the future, you let me know.
Oh man, that's awesome. You're such an awesome dude. You're very, very humble, and you do make good films. I need to go back and watch all your other ones because they are on the list. It's just that this day and age, it's so hard to keep up on everything,
So hard. There's so much good stuff out there. I suffer the same dilemma, but listen, the fact that you guys watched and appreciated 645 is a win, and I consider you guys now friends and fans, and it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, and same here, man. You're definitely part of the family. If there's ever a time you want to come on and talk about movies, anything that we're reviewing, you're more than welcome to come on, man, because this was such a joy, and we've been doing a lot of interviews, and like they just keep getting better and better every time we do them, and everybody we keep getting on here is just really, really cool. So it was definitely a pleasure talking to you. And
you guys stay safe and have a great weekend.
Yeah, and thank you, man. And
take care.
This was the Barrens Hideout Podcast. I was your host, Dustin. And now is our special guest, Craig Singer, director of 645. Please go check it out. I'll have links to everything down below. Please go and support this film because it definitely needs it. Thank you, guys.